Hello friends, welcome, namaskar. Now in the next session I am starting with exchange rate fluctuations. So when you read the newspaper, you must be coming across the concept of devaluation of currency, revaluation of currency, depreciation, appreciation. All these concepts you will find very frequently in news. Here let me start with all these concepts in detail. So we will discuss every concept with example, with logic, and along with that we will see the previous year question. So let us start. So the coverage of this session will be depreciation of rupee, devaluation of rupee, revaluation, appreciation, right? So all this is related to the fluctuation in the exchange rate. Then we will discuss currency crisis and the hard currency, the meaning of the hard currency. So first one, exchange rate. What is the meaning of exchange rate? So exchange rate basically means the value of domestic currency in terms of some foreign currency, right? So for the understanding purpose, I would like to introduce one analogy over here, right? So just to read that this exchange rate basically means market price. Market price, right? Just understand, for the sake of understanding, I am introducing this. So don't read this exchange rate, understand the market price, right? So market price of what? Market price of foreign currency. Market price of foreign currency. And where? In the international foreign exchange market. I know that you didn't get this point. Let me introduce. So normally we have the market. In the market there is buying and selling of the commodities. For example, we buy the rice, wheat, chair, computer, air conditioner, camera, lighting, TV. So all the commodities are available and every commodity has a price, right? So this is the market price of the commodity. So that is the market of the commodity. Now we are talking about the market of the foreign currency or market of the different currencies, the currencies of different countries. So the currency of USA, dollar, currency of Eurozone, that is the euro, currency of India, that is the Indian rupee, currency of Japan, and so on. So in the international foreign exchange market, all the currencies are available for a price. Every currency has a market price. Every currency is available for sale and purchase, and every currency has a price, right? So similar to the commodity market, there is an exchange market. In the exchange market, similar to the commodity price, there is a market price of the currency also. Each and every currency is having the market price. Now coming to the exchange rate. What is the meaning of exchange rate? Exchange rate is that rate at which home currency is exchanged for 1 unit of foreign currency. Or let us see home currency. Home currency basically means that is the Indian rupee. This is the symbol of Indian rupee. Is exchanged for 1 unit of foreign currency. What is the meaning of foreign currency? For let us say, for example, US dollar, right? So rate at which home currency is exchanged for 1 unit of foreign currency, or in other words, how much Indian rupee we need to pay to buy 1 unit of US dollar. How much Indian rupee we need to pay to buy 1 unit of foreign currency, that is the Indian dollar. So that is the USA dollar, right? Suppose for example we need to pay 40 rupees. So this 40 rupees represents that by paying the 40 rupees as the market price of US dollar, we can buy $1. So this 40 rupees exchange rate represents the value of $1, right? So when I say rupee dollar exchange rate, when I say rupee dollar exchange rate, that basically means that how much rupee I have to give to buy $1. This is the meaning of exchange rate. How much domestic currency I have to give to buy one foreign currency unit. This is the meaning of the exchange rate. Now, let me introduce you to the term external value, right? So, here I will give you a comparison. Let us compare. So there are two terms. One is the exchange rate of domestic currency. Another is the external value of domestic currency. And friends, please be careful when you are understanding this concept. Please be careful, because this differentiation is going to be important in the entire discussion that we will do now onwards in this session, right? So this is the foundation of this lecture. You can say that also. So exchange rate, so we just discussed that suppose I say rupee dollar exchange rate. That means if I say rupees 40 per US dollar, so this is the exchange rate. This is the exchange rate. So this is the case 1. In the case 1, the exchange rate is 40 rupees for $1. Now, in the case 2, let us say rupees 50 is equal to $1. So now, as compared to the case 1, the exchange rate has actually increased. So there is an increase in the exchange rate. Now case 3. Suppose rupees 60 $1 per dollar. That means again the exchange rate has increased. Now in the case 4, let us say exchange rate is rupees 33 per US dollar. So that means the exchange rate has decreased. So this is how the exchange rate is increasing or decreasing, right? So in the first case, we need to pay 40 rupees and we will get $1. In the second case, we need to pay 50 rupees and we will get $1. In the third case, we need to pay 60 rupees and we will get $1. In the fourth case, we need to pay 33 rupees and we will get $1, right? So friends, now let us see what is the external value of domestic currency, right? External value of rupee. In the case number 1, if rupees 40 can buy $1, can I say that rupee 1, it can buy 1 upon $40, that is $0.025. Yes. So can I say external value basically means dollar to rupee exchange rate, or how much dollar needs to be paid to buy 1 unit of rupee, right? How many dollars needs to be paid to buy 1 unit of rupee. So this is the dollar to rupee exchange rate. So this is the external value of the domestic currency, and this is the exchange rate of domestic currency. So exchange rate, this is the exchange rate and this is the external value. So केस नंबर 1 में हमने बताया कि external exchange rate is 40 rupees per dollar. In the case 1, exchange rate has increased from $1 50 rupees to, so in the case 2, the exchange rate has increased from 40 rupees to 50 rupees. And let us see external value. External value, that means in rupee 1, how many dollar? So external value is basically decreased. External value is decreased. In case number 3, external value is 1 upon 60. That means 0.0167. In the case 4, external value is 1 upon 33. That is 0.3. Right? So you can see here exchange rate is increased from 40 to 50 and external value is decreased. Here exchange rate is increased from 50 to 60. Here external value is decreased. Here exchange rate is decreased and here external value is increased. External value is increased. So one thing that you can see commonly, that there is a opposite direction in which exchange rate of domestic currency and external value of domestic currency follows, because this is the rupee to dollar rate and this is the dollar to rupee rate, right? So in the discussion that I will do now onwards, please be careful. Whenever I say exchange rate is increasing, please understand that rupee to dollar, that is how many rupee we need to give to buy $1. And when I say external value is decreasing, that means the worth of rupee, that how many dollar it can buy in 1 rupee, that is being discussed. So exchange rate versus external value, you need to be very much clear. Coming back, so we discussed the concept of exchange rate versus the external value of rupee. Now, exchange rate, it varies depending upon the demand for and the supply of currencies. Demand for and the supply of currencies. So, for discussing this, let us go back to the exchange rate regimes. So, we discussed the concept of exchange rate regimes, that primarily there are two kind of exchange rate regimes. One is the flexible exchange rate regime, another is fixed exchange rate regime. Flexible and fixed. Flexible exchange rate regime means where there is no intervention from the side of government and it is the market forces. And when I say market forces, the demand and supply forces, they are impacting the exchange rate. Exchange rate is determined through the demand and supply forces. In case of fixed exchange rate, there is an authority. So authority can be the government or it can be the central bank. So this authority, it fixes the exchange rate, and this exchange rate is fixed with reference to some dollar. So it can be with respect to the US dollar or it can be with respect to the let us say gold or maybe euro or any currency including the SDR of the IMF. So this authority is fixing the value of the domestic currency with reference to the dollar. So it can say our currency is equal to $1 or our currency is equal to $0.5 or our currency is equal to $0.1. Similarly, it can link to gold or it can link to euro, it can link to any one, either of all these three, right? So this is how the two exchange rate regime works. Now, in case of flexible exchange rate regime, if there is fluctuation fluctuation in exchange rate, and fluctuation will be happening because of demand and supply forces only. I will discuss this in the next slide. So fluctuation in exchange rate regime, it can be of two types. One is depreciation, that means the external value of the rupee is decreasing, or it can be in the form of appreciation, that means the external value of the rupee is increasing. External value of the rupee is increasing, right? So this is one way. Another way can be through the fixed exchange rate regime, and in this regime the fluctuation, these are done by the authority only, and if the external value is reduced, that is called devaluation, and if appreciation is done, or external value is increased, then this is called revaluation. So devaluation is in correspondence to the depreciation, and revaluation is correspondence to the appreciation, right? So these are the four major kind of fluctuation which we will be discussing in this session. And before we discuss about that, we need to first discuss this demand supply forces. What are these forces and how are they impacting the price of the exchange rate, right? How are they impacting the exchange rate, right? So demand supply forces and how they impact the exchange rate. Coming back to the example that I took in the starting of the session, that there is a commodity market where every commodity is having a price and we can buy the commodity at that price. Similarly, there is a foreign exchange market where every currency is having a price and we can pay the price and we can buy the foreign currency, right? So there is a price for everything. How is that price determined? For determination of that price in the economy, there are two laws. One is law of demand, another is law of supply. I am repeating, one is law of demand, another is law of supply. So there are these two laws, right? How these laws interplay with each other and how they determine the price, that's a very long discussion, right? But how this law of demand and how this law of supply impact the exchange rate, the price of the foreign currency, we can see over here. And for your understanding, just consider that we are talking about a commodity. We are talking about, say, 1 kilogram of rice. So let us take the example of 1 kilogram of rice, right? So demand, supply and price. So just stay with me, carefully answer whatever I'm asking. So in the case one, let us suppose the price of 1 kg of rice is 40. The price of 1 kg of rice is 40. Now, if the demand of the rice increase in the market, if the demand of the rice increase but supply remains same, that is more people are demanding the same good, so price will increase or decrease? Price will naturally increase. Common sense. So just think from the common sense. Don't think too much. Just common sense. If something is more in demand and supply is not increasing, that means price will increase. If demand is decreasing and supply remains same, then price will come down. If supply increases and demand remains same, that means price will come down, because supply is increasing and demand is not increasing. So more goods are available to the same number of people, so people will start bargaining, or the competitive supplier, they will start producing the good and supplying at a low rate. So the sale price will come down because there is excess supply and the demand is same. In the next case, if supply is decreased and demand remains same, the price will go up. Right? So we took the example of 1 kilogram of rice. Right? The same example we can fit for rupee dollar exchange rate. Yes or no? Yes, we can take. It is very clear, no doubt about it. We can take, right? So just understand from this slide that the demand and supply forces, they are impacting the price. The demand and supply forces, they are impacting the price. Right? This discussion should be very much clear to you. Now coming back, now you might ask, sir, what are the factors which impact the demand and supply? What are the factors which impact the demand and supply of the currency? So these are the factors, and I have already discussed these factors when I discussed the exchange rate regimes. But again, I will go through fastly and discuss with you so that you can recall the discussion. Right? Let us see how different factors are impacting the demand and supply. Right? First factor is the differences in the inflation. So in the case 1, when inflation increases, when the rate of inflation increases, that means in the international market, from the point of view of export, our products become less competitive, because when the cost of our product will increase in the international market, the demand will come down. It is very natural, right? So inflation in the domestic market, it will lead to a reduction in the export, and when export is reduced, that means the foreign exchange supply is reduced. When foreign exchange supply is reduced, that means the price of foreign currency can increase. The price of foreign currency can increase. That means the external value of Indian rupee can decrease. That means there is the condition of depreciation of domestic currency. I hope the concept is very clear to you. Case 2. Inflation is decreased. The rate of inflation is reduced. In that case, the export will increase. Right? If export is increased, the foreign exchange currency will increase. The supply of foreign currency will increase. The demand will not increase suddenly. Right? So the value of foreign currency will come down. The value of domestic currency will go up. So there will be appreciation in the value of rupee. Right? So this is how this controlling the inflation or reduction in the inflation can help. Now what is so this was the impact on the export as far as inflation is concerned. From the inflation, what is the impact on the import? So if there is inflation in the domestic country, that is the prices of domestic country products are increasing, then the buyer will go outside country also and will check whether the prices are less or more outside India, and wherever the customer feels that the prices are low, the person will buy from outside India, right? So because of increase in the domestic products price, the import will increase. If the import increases, that means we have to pay foreign currency. So the foreign currency demand will increase. That means the foreign currency value will increase. The price of the foreign currency will increase. That means the value of the domestic currency will come down. So you can see that this inflation is actually impacting the demand and supply both on the side of import and on the side of export, right? So it is impacting the demand and supply of the currency. Second, differentials in the interest rate. Why interest rates are important? So it is the interest rate based upon which the foreign investors are investing into any country. So take for example, USA is having the rate of interest of 2% per annum. So in the developed countries, the rate of interest is really very low. The countries like India, which are developing, the rate of interest is very high, around 6% to 8%, for example. So any investor in the world would always like to invest into the country like India because the rate of interest is very high in India, right? So in USA, the rate of interest is low. However, at the same time, in USA, the benefit is that there is virtually no risk. So risk is very, very less in USA. In India, the rate of interest is high, but risk is also high, right? Now, how this interest rate differentiation can impact? Suppose the USA is giving 2% and India is giving 6% in the existing scenario. Now, USA increases the rate of interest to 4% and India does not change its rate of interest. So in the USA, rate of interest is 4% and risk is very, very less because there is strong financial stability of the USA. So because of the increase in rate of interest in the USA, what will happen? That foreign investment which is available in India or the people who have invested into India, they will bring their money back to the USA. They will take their money back to the USA. And because of this transaction, because of this outflow of money from the India to the USA, the foreign exchange supply will reduce in India. And because of reduction in the supply, the price will increase. The price of the foreign currency will increase and the price of the domestic currency will decrease. The external value of the domestic currency will decrease, right? So this is the impact of the interest rate and vice versa. That means when India increases the interest rate as compared to USA, the people will invest more into India. So the investment will come into India. If investment comes into India, that means the foreign currency supply will increase in India. If the foreign currency supply increases in India, the value of the foreign currency will come down. Or from other perspective, if the people want to invest into India because the rate of interest is high in India, they will try to buy Indian rupee because to invest into Indian market they need Indian rupee. So when they try to buy Indian rupee, that will increase the demand of the Indian rupee and the supply of Indian rupee will not increase suddenly. So there is increase in the demand but supply do not increase suddenly. Because of that, the value of the Indian currency will go up, right? So can you see that this rate of interest differential is also impacting the demand and supply both. Third, public debt. Now, how will this impact the demand and supply of the foreign currency? So if the public debt is high, that means the Indian government might have to take the foreign currency loan, right? So the loan may have to be taken. On that loan, the interest has to be paid. And if interest has to be paid, that interest will be the outgo of the foreign currency. And in the future, this loan will also be returned. So overall, because of this public debt, there will be outflow of the foreign currency in the future. And that will actually reduce the supply of the foreign exchange. Next is terms of trade. Terms of trade basically means the export prices versus import prices, right? So if the export prices of India's goods is very good, that means their export potential is high, so they will bring more foreign currency, and that means more supply of foreign currency. That means the value of the foreign currency will go down. That means the value of the domestic currency will go up, right? So if the export prices of Indian goods are good, that will have a positive impact, and vice versa. If the export prices are low, then it will have a negative impact. Import prices. In case of import prices, if the import prices for the India's goods, for example, the oil, if the prices of oil are increasing because there is a shortage, because there is a crisis in the Syria, Iraq, etc. Because of all those crises, if the prices of the oil are increasing, that means the foreign currency requirement will be high from side of India. We have to buy more foreign currency, right? So because of the increase in the demand of the foreign currency, the value of the foreign currency will increase, the price of the foreign currency will increase, and the price of the domestic currency will come down. So this terms of trade is also impacting the demand and supply. Next, political stability. So consider there are two countries. One is a country like India, comparatively stable, and another is the country like Syria or Afghanistan, where there is no stability for the past over 10 years. So in which country the foreign investor will be interested in investing the amount? The answer is very clear: India, because India is politically stable country, right? So in the politically stable country, the foreign exchange will come more. That means the supply of the foreign currency will increase. That means the value of the foreign currency will come down, and the value of the domestic currency will appreciate, right? Economic performance. So compare two countries, China and India. Whose economic performance is good? The answer is China. The economic performance of China is more or much better than the economic performance of the India. So which country will attract more foreign exchange? Answer is China. So whose domestic currency will appreciate? Answer is China. So this political stability and the economic performance also impact the demand and the supply of the foreign currency, and ultimately the exchange rate is also determined because of all these factors, right? So all these 5 factors, they are responsible for change in the demand and supply. They are responsible for change in the demand and supply, which will ultimately impact the exchange rate. And this increase in the external value is called appreciation, and decrease in the external value is called depreciation. So these demand and supply forces are working in case of the flexible exchange rate market or floating exchange rate market. So please be aware about that. Now, exchange rate, it varies depending upon the demand for and the supply of currencies. So we have discussed this thing in detail. Now, please read this question, and this question has been asked twice in 2012 and in 1998. So there is no surprise, there will be no surprise if this question is asked again. So take 1 minute and answer this question. Your time starts now, and then we will discuss about this. So, let us discuss this question. The price of any currency in international market is decided by number 1, World Bank. Answer is no. Never, never. Number 2, demand for goods and services provided by the country concerned. Yes, it impacts. The level of export and import actually impacts. Stability of the government of the concerned country. Yes. So we have already seen it impacts. And economic potential of the country in question. So this is a statement to think about. Right? So before we decide the answer, let us see the options. Which of the statements given above are correct? So we know that statement number 1 is wrong. That means option A is wrong, option B is also wrong. So either option B or option C is the correct answer. We have already seen statement 2 and 3 are correct. So answer is option B, statement 2 and 3. Right? So this is how we can solve the previous year question if we know the concept in detail. So this kind of question you cannot solve from the standard textbook. Be it any textbook, you cannot solve the question if the question is of this level of difficulty. Now, so exchange rate fluctuation. Either there can be fixed exchange rate regime or there can be flexible exchange rate regime, right? In case of fixed exchange rate regime, we have already seen there can be either devaluation or revaluation. In case of flexible exchange rate regime, they can be either depreciation or appreciation, right? So now we will discuss each one of them. Now let us see the journey of Indian rupee. What has been the performance of Indian rupee as far as exchange rate over the period of time since the independence is concerned, right? So immediately at the time of independence, that is on the 15th of August, the Indian rupee was linked to the British pound and its value was at par with the American dollar, right? So this was called the fixed exchange rate regime, right? The fixed exchange rate regime, right? So this was there. Then between 1948 to 1966, this was fixed at 4.79 against a dollar, So the value kept changing, but again it was the fixed exchange rate, that is, it was decided by the government itself. Later on, the rupees link with the British currency was broken in 1971 and it was linked directly to the US dollar, right? In 1993, for the first time, the exchange rate was freed to be determined by the market, and in 1993, the rupee stood at 31.37 against a dollar. So, till 1993, from 1947 to 1993, we had the fixed exchange rate system, and from 1993 onwards till now we have the flexible exchange rate system, right? Flexible exchange rate system. The rupee traded in the range of 40 to 50 between 2000 to 2010. So till 2010 it was hovering around 50. Now let us see the trend of rupee during the last 5 years. So this is the trend between 2015 to 2016, 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, and 2019 to 2020. So you can see that in 2015 the rate was approximately 62 rupees 62 per US dollar. So this thing we are actually calculating the dollar and the INR exchange rate, right? So 62 in 2016, one of the peak rate was approximately 68 INR per US dollar. Then we can see this is one of the lowest between 2017 to 2018. That means it was approximately 62, right? So here, from here to here, there is depreciation in the external value. From here to here, there is appreciation in the external value. From here to here, again, there is depreciation. So can you see, between 2018 to 2019, this is a peak, that is approximately 74. Again there was a low, and now again it is increasing in the month of February 2020, right? So this figure is on 6th of March 2020. So you can see that this has been the fluctuation in the Indian rupee. Now let us understand the concept of depreciation. Depreciation in the domestic currency. Depreciation of domestic currency, the meaning is increase in the exchange rate or fall in the external value of domestic currency. Very simple. So let us understand the depreciation concept. So depreciation is basically the increase in the exchange rate. That means if today 1 US dollar is equal to 40 rupees and tomorrow this 1 US dollar becomes 50 rupees, this means there is increase in the exchange rate, right? However, the external value of the rupee is decreased from 0.025 to 0.02 dollar per rupee, right? So there is a increase in the exchange rate but decrease in the external value. This is the case of depreciation. This is the case of depreciation. Now, what are the reasons? What are the reasons why there will be decrease in the external value? of domestic currency or of INR, Indian rupee. So there will be decrease in the external value when either the demand of the domestic currencies decreases or supply of the domestic currency increases. Or the demand of the foreign currency increases or the supply of the foreign currency decreases. So these can be the four different situations in which this depreciation can happen. Now let us see that what can be the reasons, right? So again coming back to the meaning, in layman's terms, it means now $1 can be exchanged for more rupees. So earlier $1 was equivalent to 40 rupees. Now more rupees, so it can be, suppose for example, 50 rupees, right? That is the depreciation of rupee and the simultaneous appreciation of dollar, right? So whenever there is depreciation of domestic currency, that will mean there is appreciation in the foreign currency, right? Friends, I am discussing the same concept in different ways. I am trying to interlink it as much as possible. I understand that you might feel, sir, this lecture is going in detail, this lecture is taking time, but my purpose is that you can solve each and every question which is asked from this topic. So do not worry, just be with me, right? I will take you to the examination level in a very simplified manner, right? So have a patience. Now, so depreciation of the domestic currency, that means increase in the exchange rate or fall in the value of external value of the domestic currency because of additional demand of foreign currency. So why this additional demand of foreign currency can be there? This additional demand can be because of imports being high in India, right? Now these imports can increase either in the value or in the quantity, right? So in case of India, there are two major imported items. One is the crude oil, another is the gold. So either the value of crude oil increases, that means the global oil prices go up because of the crisis like Iran versus US issue, Syria crisis and many more crises. So either the prices will go up, because of that the value will go up, right? Or the quantity of consumption will increase because of increase in the industry, increase in the population of India. So increase in the consumption of fuel. So all this is leading to the increase in the import of the crude oil. So that means the quantity of the crude oil is increasing. So one reason can be increase in the oil prices. Another reason can be increase in the gold. So either the quantity is increased in case of wedding season, or the value can increase because of the increase in the gold prices worldwide, right? So the additional demand of foreign currency is required when the imports are increasing. Because of this increase in the import, we have to pay foreign currency to the external person, to the seller of the good from whom we are buying the goods. So either the import is increasing or the export is coming down. This can be another reason. Because of this, the supply of the foreign currency is decreasing, right? So export is coming down. Or the foreign investment is flying away. Because of this, the foreign currency demand is increasing. So because of the bad policies of the government, because of the NPA crisis, because of the poor renewable energy policy, because of the law and order situation. There can be n number of reasons. Because of all those reasons, if the foreign investment is flying away from India, right? If it is flying away from India, then the demand of the foreign currency will increase and there can be depreciation. Excess supply of domestic currency. Excess supply of domestic currency. How is that possible? Excess supply of domestic currency can be because of easy monetary policy. I hope you remember. So easy monetary policy means the repo rate is reduced. Repo rate is reduced because of the inflation situation being in control. So the government want to increase the economic activity, and because of that the interest rate are actually decreased, and because of the decrease in the interest rate, the domestic currency availability is increased. And when there is decrease in the interest rate, then also the foreign investment will fly away, because when interest rate is decreased in India, they have less incentive to invest in India. They want to invest outside India, right? So this easy monetary policy can be one reason of excess supply of the domestic currency, right? And there are other reasons. Let us see now. So now let us see. Okay, this slide we will see later on, because at this point of time you will not be happy studying this. So what are the reasons for the rupee depreciation? First reason is demand supply rule. A lot of this we have already discussed so far. Second reason is fiscal deficit, right? So fiscal deficit basically means that government has to borrow, right? So fiscal deficit happens when the government expenses is more than the government receipt. So when expenses of the government are more than the government receipt, then the deficit happens, and in such case the government has to borrow. And then when government has to borrow, that means the foreign currency demand is increasing, and because the foreign currency demand is increasing, the value of the foreign currency increases and the value of the domestic currency goes down, and it results into the depreciation, right? Oil prices we have discussed and we will discuss more. Dollar strengthening, inflation, volatility in the equity market. So let us discuss each one of them now. First of all, demand supply rule. So demand supply rule basically is pertaining to the import and export situation. So if the demand for the import is increasing, that will lead to the demand for more foreign currency. And we already discussed there are primarily two reasons: the oil and the gold, because of which the demand for the foreign currency can increase. Export can come down because of various reasons, because of protectionism outside India. The countries like USA, they are protecting their economy, so they don't want to outsource the IT product to India. Because of that, the export is coming down, so the supply of foreign currency is coming down, so the value of foreign currency will increase, so the domestic currency value will decrease, right? So this is how this import and export will play out. Every country has an external account to keep track of the cross-border transactions. So there are cross-border transactions which are recorded in the balance of payment statement, and it has two accounts. One is the current account, another is the capital account. So the transactions happen in the form of goods, services, transfers, capital account transactions. In recent times, our current account deficit has widened and capital flows are not being able to bridge the gap. So current account deficit has widened. That means the imports are more and exports are less. So this situation that we discussed, this is because of this results into basically the current account deficit only. Now, how does the current account deficit impact the value of rupee, right? The value of rupee. So when there is current account deficit, that means the import is more than export, and when import is more than export, that means the demand of the dollar will increase, right? So to pay for this import, we will increase demand of the dollar, right? And because of increase in the demand of the dollar, that is demand of the foreign currency, the value of the US dollar will appreciate against the Indian rupee. That means our domestic currency is depreciating, right? So increase in the current account deficit may lead to the rupee depreciation. Friends, I am trying to interlink as much concept as possible. Do not get confused. Whenever you are in confusion, simply apply the logic of demand supply. Simply see whether the demand of the foreign currency is increasing or decreasing. Accordingly, you can decide the price. And the discussion that we did in the starting, demand supply, right? Exchange rate regime, right? Exchange rate versus external value. Do not forget that. That is a fundamental, right? Now, oil prices. How the oil prices resulting into the rupee depreciation. So the domestic demand for the oil can increase because of increase in the population or because of the increase in the vehicle density. Right? So increase in the population or increase in the vehicle density. Because of these two reasons, the domestic demand for the oil can increase. The demand for the dollar also increases, right? So when there is a more demand for the oil, the dollar demand will also increase. And this demand for oil is also increasing because of the poor subsidies policy. Because the government is giving more and more subsidy, that is resulting into the more people consuming more petroleum products. So they have the incentive to consume the petroleum products. There is no disincentive to them. Now, India is the third largest crude oil importing country in the world, coming only after US and China. So this is one of the facts. You can see how much important these oil prices are. India imports more than 80% of its crude oil requirements, thereby making it more vulnerable to changes in the international oil market. So more than 80% of our crude oil requirements we are importing. For example, if the crude oil prices increase, our total import cost will also increase, affecting our current account balance, which in turn affects the currency market, right? So if the crude oil prices increase because of Syria crisis, because of US-Iran crisis, or more recently because of the coronavirus crisis, so there can be n number of reasons because of which the crude oil prices can increase. So if the crude oil prices increase, the total import bill will also increase. That means the currency markets will be impacted badly. Volatility in the equity market, right? So this can impact the foreign investment. Equity, investment made by FIIs in the Indian companies, right? So equity means the investment which has been made by the foreign investors into the Indian companies. If the investors withdraw their money, it decreases the inflow of dollars in the Indian market, right? So why will the investors will withdraw the money? The investors will withdraw the money because of interest rate fluctuation. So either the interest rate in the USA are increasing or the interest rate in India are decreasing. In any of these situations, the investors will start withdrawing the amount from the India. Or in case the India's laws are not becoming more reformed, if there is no reform, then also it can happen. So if the investors withdraw their money, it decreases the inflow of dollars in the Indian market. Thus, by demand and supply rule, the dollar becomes stronger. A temporary ban on import of gold coins caused withdrawal of the investment by the FIA, for example. Now, There are other causes. Decline in the country's overall export. So it can happen because of the poor infrastructure, because of the different issues. For example, phytosanitary bans which are adopted by the countries of Euro countries. For example, this coronavirus issue, for example, because of USA's protectionist policies, the overall export may come down, and because of decrease in the overall export, there can be decline in the export revenue, and which can ultimately reduce the availability of the foreign currency. If the availability of the foreign currency is reduced, that means the rupee value is also reduced, right? Increase in the demand of imported goods and services, right? So when people's standard of living is increasing, their income level is increasing, people want to buy more and more imported goods, imported laptop, imported mobile phone, imported car, imported bag. So we want to have more and more of imported goods. We want to enjoy the luxuries of the outside India. So in that case, the demand for the imported goods and services will increase, which will lead to the trade deficit, and increase in the current account deficit, which will lead to the net outflow of the currency, which can actually weaken the external exchange rate, leading to the currency depreciation, right? So the overall export decline and increase in the demand of import, both will actually lead to the currency depreciation. Next is monetary policy of the central bank. So if the central bank reduces its policy interest rate, it can lead to the outflow of the hot money, right? So we have already discussed, in case the central government reduces the rate of interest because it want to give boost to the economic activity. If the interest rate are decreased, the investors will have no incentive to invest into Indian market. They will want to invest outside India. Because of that, the money will flow from India to the USA, and because of that, the supply of domestic currency the supply of foreign currency will come down. Because of that, the value of foreign currency will increase, and the price of the domestic currency will increase. Now, what are the impacts of fall in the rupee against the dollar, right? So there can be positive impact as well as there can be negative impact. So we will have both the positive impact and the negative impact. First of all, let us see who are the winners. So winners of the depreciation are exporters. Why they? So suppose the exporter has agreed into a transaction worth $100 with a US company, right? So these import and export agreement, generally they happen in the dollar term, because dollar is the hard currency. Dollar is the most appreciated and most acceptable currency in the worldwide. So most of the people, they want to sign the agreement in the form of US dollar only, right? So suppose India's exporter, he signed the agreement of $100, right? Now suppose earlier the price was 40 rupees per dollar. Now this price has increased to 50 rupees per dollar, right? So exchange rate is increased. In the first case, exporter will get how much of Indian rupee? Only 100 into 40, that is 4,000 rupees. And because of the depreciation, the Indian exporter will get how much? 5,000, right? So exporters revenue has increased from 4,000 rupees to the 5,000 rupees. I hope you understand the concept, right? So exporter will get the benefit. Second, domestic tourist industry. Domestic tourist industry. Why that? Suppose we take the example of Agra. In the Agra, the rate of per room per day booking is 4,000 rupees. Now, earlier, if the foreign tourist want to come into India, the foreign tourist has to pay 4,000 upon 40. That is $100. Now, after the depreciation from 40 to 50, he or she has to pay 4,000 upon 50. That means just $80. So because of the depreciation in the Indian rupee, the cost of traveling to India is decreasing, right? So the domestic tourist industry will see a jump. The foreign travelers into India, they will increase. Number 3, the workers gaining jobs in the export industry. Definitely, if the exporters revenue are increasing, it will actually positively impact the people who are working in the export industry. Number 4, economic growth might increase. Economic growth might increase. Yes, very true. So because of the depreciation, the import cost goes up, right? Import cost goes up. When import cost goes up, the people will want to buy from the domestic country. That means the domestic demand will increase. That means if the demand is increased, the production will also increase. So GDP will also increase. If the GDP is increased, the economic growth will automatically increase. Economic growth will happen. Number 5, current account deficit should improve. Right? Why this current account deficit should improve? So if more export revenue is coming, more domestic tourism is coming, economic growth is happening, it will actually positively impact the current account deficit. Who are the losers? Who are the losers because of the rupee depreciation? Number 1, the consumers who buy the imported goods, because the cost of import increases. Why that? So suppose we take the example of laptop. Suppose the value of laptop in the US dollar is $1,000. So earlier any importer has to pay how much? 100 into 40 rupees. Sorry, 1000 into 40, that is 40,000. So earlier the cost of import of laptop was 40,000 rupees. Now after this 40, the cost of buying is now 50,000 rupees. Right? So this is how the consumers who buy the import, they will get adversely impacted. Number 2, the residents who holiday abroad. So similar examples goes. So if the cost of hotel for one day booking is $1,000 in USA, earlier the cost of hotel was 40,000. Now the cost will become 50,000. So the people who want to holiday outside India, they will be adversely impacted. Number 3, the firms who buy imported raw material. So similarly, their cost of raw material will also increase. Number 4, those on fixed income or wages who see inflation rise faster. So if someone is having the fixed income or wages, they will also be impacted. Number 5, the foreign exporters or tourist industry. So they will also badly impacted. Why? Because if the resident who are holidaying abroad, their cost is increasing, so the foreign tourist industry will also get down. So here you can see effect of depreciation. If import become more expensive, right? So because of depreciation, if earlier something was available for 40, now the same thing is available for 50 rupees, right? So import become expensive and export become cheaper. So we have seen in the previous example, the exporter actually benefit. If import are becoming more expensive, that means the quantity of import will decrease. And if exporters are becoming more cheaper, that means the export quantity will increase. If import is decreasing and export is increasing, if import is decreasing and export is increasing, that means the demand for the production will rise, right? So the demand from the domestic industries to produce goods and services will rise, and when this demand increases, that means more production will happen, that means the GDP will increase. If the GDP increases, that means the economic growth will increase, the economic growth will happen, right? So because of the depreciation, there can be positive impact upon the economic growth. And if import become more expensive, import quantity is reduced, export quantity is increased, the current account balance of payment will also improve, because exports are improving and imports are decreasing, right? So one impact is upon the current account, another impact is upon the economic growth, and the third impact is upon the inflation. The inflation impact is actually adverse. How is that? So in case of inflation, because of import becoming more expensive, it will bring inflation to the country. So suppose the oil prices become high. So when there is rupee depreciation, the cost of imported oil will increase, and because of increase in the cost of imported oil, it will impact the domestic industry, the transportation sector of the India, railways, roadways, wherever the fuel is being used. It will impact all those industries which are directly or indirectly dependent upon the petroleum products, the gas industry, fertilizer, chemicals industry, etc. So their cost of production will go up. When their cost of production goes up, it will actually resulting into the increase in the prices of goods and services in India. That means there will be inflation, right? So because of the rupee depreciation, there can be high inflation also, right? So this is the adverse impact. People who benefit, we have already seen. Again, the people, the exporters, NRIs will also get benefited. IT sector will benefit because of increase in export revenue, right? So this IT sector is basically one of the biggest exporter, and in case of rupee depreciation, they will get benefit to the hotel industry. We have already seen the domestic hotel industry will benefit. So we took the example of Agra hotel, right? So same example. Benefit to the investors who have invested into the international fund. So the people who have invested into international fund, suppose they get the earning of $100 from the international fund. Earlier they were getting rupees 50, that means 100 into 40 means 4,000. Now they are getting rupees 50, that means they are getting rupees 5,000. So they will actually get benefited. So you can see over here, this red line indicates the external value of Indian rupee, not the so basically the exchange rate. So there is depreciation in the exchange rate. Exchange rate is increasing and external value is going down. Because of the rupee depreciation, you can see there is jump in the stock prices of the IT industries. So there is an inverse relationship, opposite relationship between the rupee depreciation and the stock prices of the IT companies, right? Positive impacts. Number one, on the foreign investment, right? So the foreign investors may get attracted to invest in domestic assets such as housing market. So let us see the example. For example, if any house is available for rupees 10 lakh in India, so earlier the foreign investor has to pay how much? 10 lakh divided by 40, that is approximately $25,000. Now because of depreciation, the foreign investor has to give only 10 lakh upon 50, that is $2,000. So the same Indian property is available at a low cost for the foreign investor, right? So because of the rupee depreciation, the foreign investment will actually come into India, right? So they will try to buy the local real estate. Number 2, aggregate demand. So we have already seen in the slide that this aggregate demand will go up. So this is the same point. This aggregate demand will go up. This is the same point. Long-term positive impact. The depreciation of the domestic currency in a floating exchange rate regime, number 1, increases its export. We have seen in case of IT industry, in case of hotel industry, tourism, etc. Number 2, it boosts the spending. Number 3, it can make the economy look better for the foreign investors, right? Because the property prices, they come down from the foreign investor point of view. This can increase the flow of foreign investment, which can cancel out some of the effects of depreciation, right? So the adverse impacts of the depreciation can be actually controlled. So now let us see what are the other negative impacts. So some of the negative impacts we have already seen. The negative impacts on the importers, the people who import the goods, the negative impact on the foreign tourist industries, right? Increase in the oil prices, which is leading to the inflation, right? What are the other negative price impact? One is the inflation only. So increase in the cost of import. Suppose the cost of oil import, this will lead to cost push inflation, right? So because of increase in the cost of import of oil, the cost of transportation will increase. The cost of production in the industries like fertilizer, gas, etc., that will increase. Whereas there will be increase in the domestic demand, right? So the demand for the Indian products can increase. When there is demand for the Indian products and the supply do not increase correspondingly suddenly, that will lead to the demand pull inflation, right? So there will be cost push inflation and demand pull inflation. Fall in the real wages, right? So depreciation induced inflation, right? So when there is inflation because of depreciation, that will actually adversely impact the wages of the people. So if suppose any worker is getting 10,000 rupees, before rupee depreciation, the rate of inflation was just 3%, and now the rate of inflation is 5%. So the cost of living of the worker has increased. Because of increase in the cost of living, the worth of this 10,000 is reduced. The purchasing power of this 10,000 rupees is decreased. So that is, there is fall in the real wages. On property, the value of the domestic property for the country's citizens does not change much, right? However, the existing foreign investor, right? So just be careful. In the earlier slide, we were discussing about the foreign investor who want to buy, the person who is interested in buying the property in India. Here we are talking about the existing foreign investor. However, the existing foreign investors may lose money as the value of existing property in that country would be now lesser in the foreign currency, right? So suppose there is a value of 10 lakh rupees in India, right? So earlier when there was an exchange rate of 40, that time the value of India's property was $2,500. Now this is just $2,000. So from the perspective of foreign investor, earlier the value of investment was $2,500. Now the value is just $2,000. So this is how the property prices will decline for the foreign investor, and they will be adversely impacted. So what are the possible measures that can be taken by the Reserve Bank of India to control the situation? Number 1, using the foreign exchange reserve, right? So in case of rupee depreciation, one of the reason is the excess rupee or shortage of foreign currency, right? Suppose shortage of dollar. So the RBI will infuse the dollars into Indian market, right? So RBI will infuse the dollars into the Indian market. This is how this foreign exchange reserves can be utilized to control the situation, and this actually happens. So when the depreciation is very extreme, right? So suppose the exchange rate goes beyond 80, in that case RBI will surely do this. In fact, RBI do not wait for that long. If there is sudden increase in the exchange rate, even then the RBI can use this as a short-term measure. Number 2, making the investments attractive, right? So RBI can make the investments more attractive by easing the KYC norms. For example, the KYC norms, right? So know your customer norms can be eased out. Number 3, raising the interest rate. So if the interest rates are increased, that will mean the foreign investment, FII or FDI, they will get attracted to India, right? That means the foreign currency supply will increase. If the foreign currency supply increases, that means the depreciation will be controlled, right? So using the foreign exchange reserve, making the investments attractive, and raising the rate of interest, these are the 3 different ways through which central bank can contribute. Next, the measures which can be taken by the central government. Number 1, improving the environment for FDI, right? So this environment can be improved through relaxing the FDI norms, right? So suppose earlier only 49% was allowed in a particular sector. Now that there can be increase in the limit to 70%, 100% or whatsoever. Number 2, increasing the external commercial borrowing. So the external commercial borrowing norms, they can be eased out. Number 3, policy reforms such as goods and services tax, direct tax code, insolvency and bankruptcy code, digitization, right? Easing the labor law, all these will actually go in the direction of ease of doing business. When there is ease of doing business, then the more and more FDI will come, or FII will come, the foreign investment will come. Number 4, creating the infrastructure and promoting the inclusive growth. Again, this will also attract the foreign investment, right? So all these steps are being taken only to increase the supply of foreign currency or decreasing the availability of the domestic currency. What can be the other measures? Improving the Indian education system. If the Indian education system is improved, the Indian students do not need to go abroad. They do not need to spend the foreign currency outside India. So the foreign currency will remain into India. There will be no shortage of foreign currency, right? In fact, the people from outside India, they will come to study into India. They will bring their foreign exchange, right? So improving the education system can also help the controlling rupee depreciation. Widening the government bonds investor base, right? So the government bonds investor base can be widened. It will attract the foreign investors, and it will stop the domestic investors from sending their money outside India. Reducing the subsidy given by the government. If the subsidy on the petroleum products is decreased, that will actually reduce the unnecessary consumption of petroleum products. If the consumption of petroleum products is decreased, that means the demand for the import of oil will decrease. In-house infrastructure projects, realizing the demographic dividend. Realizing the demographic dividend means more and more people can go outside India and send the foreign remittances to India, or more and more people can open the startup innovation into India and they can export more and more goods, right? So realizing the demographic dividend is another measure. Improving the climate for foreign investors, we have already seen. Other solutions include boosting up the export incentive sector, intensive sectors like IT, textile, pharma, right? So export intensive sectors, they can be boosted, or the import substituting industries, they can be developed. Formulate the policies and restrictions on the gold import. So as much as possible, the gold import should be restricted. So the government carried out this gold bond scheme for that, right? Promote the policies like Make in India. It will attract the foreign investment. Improve the tourism. Bring back the Indian money, in the Indian black money. So the government has taken a lot of initiatives for bringing back the black money. How the common man can impact? Number one, the expenditure in the form of dollars to be reduced, right? So the common man should reduce the expenditure in the form of dollars. Number two, expenditure on the gold to be brought down. So do not buy the gold unnecessarily. People are buying more and more gold and they put the gold into the this locker, right? They do not wear. In fact, in the weddings also, I have seen the ladies in my families that they are actually using that jewelry just for putting in the locker, because in the weddings they are using the artificial jewelry because they want to look more smarter. They want to look like they want to match the jewelry to their dresses. So anyways, they are buying the jewelry for just keeping into the bank locker, right? So we should discourage the expenditure on the gold, but it is very easy to say, difficult to implement. Higher investment in government bonds, treasury bills rather than gold, right? So we should actually invest into the government bond rather than to the gold, because we invest into the gold, then we have to import more gold. That will increase the import bill. That will actually depreciate the Indian currency. Enhancement of the remittances from abroad and curtailment of remittances to abroad. So this can be possible if we start sending one of our family member to outside India, right? So here I will like to give you an example. You know the state of Punjab. So in Punjab, in every family you will get three brothers, and the three brothers are involved in, one person is going to Canada. So going to Canada and sending the remittances to India. Another second brother is going to the border, becoming the soldier, serving the country in the form of army man, uniform person. And third person is actually a farmer. So that can be ideal example how we can see the power of common man. So this example was for the purpose of fun only, right? I know that it is not possible always, but still these days we can see a lot of middle class families, they are sending their children to outside India. But irony is that the children don't come back, they stay there only. That is a problem. Anyways, the next concept is devaluation. So now let us see devaluation, right? So far we have seen depreciation. Depreciation happens because of the demand and supply forces. The demand and supply forces actually impact the foreign exchange rate. So that is the scenario in the flexible exchange rate regime. In case of fixed exchange rate regime, this fall in the external value, this is known as devaluation, right? So devaluation is basically the deliberate downward adjustment. So this deliberate downward adjustment is done by the government or the central bank of the concerned authority, concerned country, right? So in case of fixed exchange rate regime, it is the government or the central bank which is responsible for fixing the exchange rate. And when that authority brings down the external value of the exchange rate, brings down the external value of the domestic currency, then that is called devaluation. Now the question arises, why at all any country will do the devaluation? Why at all any country would like to reduce the value of its currency in the external market? The reason is very simple. Just like depreciation of the currency, one of the positive impact of the devaluation is that it positively impacts the export sector, right? So exports are incentivized and the imports are discouraged because it increases the import bill, right? So exports are increased and imports are decreased. So this creates a favorable current account balance scenario. So this is the prime reason why this devaluation is done. Now you can ask, sir, is there any example, real life example you can give? Yes, I can give the real life example. In the real life, the countries like China, they are practicing this devaluation. So the countries like China, they do not have the 100% flexible exchange rate regime. Still, they are following kind of fixed exchange rate regime only. Not apparently, but definitely. So they devalue their currency whenever they see that their exports are decreasing. So they have done this already. We will see. So devaluation is a deliberate downward adjustment of the value of country's money relative to any other currency. Countries that have a fixed exchange rate, right? So this happens in case of fixed exchange rate or semi-fixed exchange rate. So this is the case of China. Use this monetary policy tool. It is often confused with depreciation, right? So the impacts of devaluation is exactly similar to the depreciation. The impacts are same, but the factor which lead to the devaluation is different. The factor is the government intervention, right? This is opposite of the revaluation. So revaluation is basically increase in the external value. Now devaluation, this means reduction in the external value of the home currency. It is aimed. So what is the aim? The aim of devaluation is increasing export of the country. It is usually resorted to correct the deficit in the balance of trade or current account balance, right? So because of the increase in export and decrease in import, this will actually result into the trade surplus, which will ultimately result into the current account surplus, right? So you can see real world example. China has been accused of practicing a quiet currency devaluation, trying to make itself a more dominant force in the trade market. How it is trying to make more dominant force? By increasing the export. So through the devaluation, the exports are incentivized, and when there are more export, that means more and more market can be captured. On August 5, 2019, the People's Bank of China set yuan's daily reference rate below 7% dollar for the first time in over a decade. This in response to a new tariff of 110% on $300 billion worth of Chinese import imposed by the Trump administration, set to go into effect from September 1, 2019. So there has been a China in the USA-China trade war, right? So because of this USA-China trade war, USA imposed the import duty on the Chinese product. So to counter that, the China actually devalued its currency so that the cost of its product in the export market come down, and this tariff, it will actually get nullified. The Trump administration responded by labeling China a currency manipulator. So the USA said that China is a currency manipulator. It is just the latest salvo in the US-China trade war. So this is basically one of the component of the US-China trade war, but certainly not the first time China has devalued its currency. So it is not the first time that China has done this. You can see effects of devaluation. So this is very similar to the effects of depreciation, exactly same in fact. So if there is devaluation, import become expensive, export become cheaper, right? If import become expensive, the import quantities declined. If export become cheaper, export quantities increased, and it actually results into the current account balance improvement, right? And if export is increased, import is decreased, the aggregate demand rises. It results into inflation and also economic growth. We have already discussed the exactly same diagram in case of depreciation. So please read this question. I am giving you 1 minute and then we will discuss. So, consider the following actions which the government can take, and which of the above action or actions can help in reducing the current account deficit. So the question is about how to reduce the current account deficit. Statement 1, devaluing the domestic currency. So what is the impact? Impact is increase in the exports and decrease in the imports. Because of increase in the export and decrease in the import, there can be reduction in the current account deficit, right? So statement 1 is correct. Reduction in export duty. If export duty is reduced, export subsidy, not duty, it is subsidy. What is the subsidy? Subsidy is basically the benefit which the government gives to the exporter. So through the subsidy, the government wants to encourage the exporter. Government wants that exporters be benefited, right, through the subsidy. If the subsidy is reduced, that means the export will come down. If the export comes down, the trade balance will come down and current account deficit cannot be reduced, right? So the statement 2 is completely incorrect. Statement 3, adopting suitable policies which attract greater FDI and more fund from the funds, right? Yeah, it will attract FDI, but that is the capital transaction. That is the capital account transaction, right? This is the capital account transaction. This is not the current account transaction. So even this is incorrect as far as controlling the current account deficit is concerned, because we are talking about the current account deficit. So this capital account is not going to help. So which is the correct answer? Answer is option A, statement 1 only. Next question, again I am giving you 1 minute. So just read these two statements and identify whether A is correct or not, R is correct or not, and whether R is the correct justification of the A. Okay, so A, assertion, devaluation of a currency may promote export. Yes, this is very correct. We have discussed many times. R, price of the country's products in the international market may fall due to devaluation. This is also true, right? So A is the correct, so R is the correct explanation of the A, right? So both A and R are in correct one. Now revaluation. So revaluation is basically opposite of devaluation. This is opposite of devaluation, right? So when the government or the central bank increases the external value of domestic currency intentionally, then this is called revaluation. So in case of revaluation, the external value of the domestic currency is increased by the authority. So this is also a deliberate attempt. This also happens in the fixed exchange rate regime. So a revaluation is calculated or intentional or done by the authority. Upward adjustment to a country's official exchange rate relative to a chosen baseline, right? So the chosen baseline can be wage rate or price of gold or foreign currency, right? So this is basically nothing but linking the exchange rate to some standard. So in case of fixed exchange rate, this actually happens, that the exchange rate of the domestic currency is linked to some external factor. So this factor can be the wage rate or gold price or US dollar price or SDR of IMF, euro or any currency. So they will link the price of the domestic currency to any external indicator, right? So when there is an upward movement, right, in the linking, then this is called revaluation. In a fixed exchange regime, only a country's government, such as its central bank, can change the official value of the currency. Currency devaluation can be triggered by why this will happen? Variety of event, including changes in the interest rate between the various countries, right? So this can happen because of changes in the interest rate or the large scale events that impact the country. This is opposite of depreciation. This is completely opposite of depreciation, right? This means increase in the external value of home currency. And what is the aim? The aim is actually decreasing the export of the country. And it is usually resorted to correct the surplus in the balance of trade or current account balance. Now the concept of appreciation. The concept of appreciation is exactly opposite to the concept of depreciation, right? The concept of appreciation is exactly opposite to the concept of depreciation, right? So this appreciation and depreciation both happen because of the market forces, both happen in the flexible exchange rate regime, right? And in both the cases it is the demand and supply forces which determine the exchange rate. In case of devaluation, the exchange rate is increasing and the external value is coming down. In case of appreciation, in the current scenario, the exchange rate comes down and external value goes up. So this is the reverse case. So fall in the exchange rate, that is increase in the external value of domestic currency. So because of additional demand of the home currency or excess supply of the foreign currency, right? So this excess supply of the foreign currency, this is one of the reason why between 2018 and 19 there has been appreciation in the value of Indian currency. So there has been huge supply of foreign currency because of high FDI and FII, right? Or there can be additional demand of the home currency. So what can be the reasons for the appreciation? Number one, if the central bank increases the policy interest rate. So if the policy interest rate are increased, that means the foreign investors, they will be attracted to India. They will be incentivized to invest into India. And that will increase the FDI and FII into India. That will increase the supply of the foreign currency into India. If there is increase in the foreign currency supply, the value of the foreign currency will come down and the value of domestic currency will go up. Number two, current account surplus. So when there is good amount of export, in that case also there can be appreciation, right? So because of current account surplus, there will be inflow of foreign exchange and it will lead to the appreciation in the exchange rate of the domestic currency. Increase in the export, right? So this is basically the same as 2 only. Because of increase in the export only, there will be current account surplus, which will lead to the increase in the foreign currency. Intervention by the central bank through open market operations. So even the open market operation, through the open market operations, the central bank can buy the domestic currency from the foreign exchange market and it can actually lead to the appreciation of the domestic currency, right? High economic growth, this can also lead to the foreign investment. So all these are the reasons for the rupee appreciation in any country. Now, what are the impacts of the rupee appreciation? Number one, exports become less competitive, right? So in case of the rupee depreciation, export became more cheaper, export revenue increased. In case of appreciation, this is completely opposite. Export become less competitive, this leads to decrease in the country's export. Number two, import become more cheaper and thus there is an overall increase in the import. Number three, the value of the remittances is coming from abroad decreases in the domestic currency, right? So the impacts are completely opposite to the impacts of the depreciation. You can see effects of appreciation. So because of appreciation, the imports become cheaper, right? The value of imports goes down. That means the quantity of imports is increased. When the import quantity is increased, and on the other hand, export become more expensive. And because the export become more expensive, the quantity of export comes down. So imports are increased and exports are reduced. This means the current account balance deteriorates. So current account deficit, it increases basically, right? And because of increase in the import, decrease in the export, the aggregate demand for the domestic industries goes down, right? And because of the reduction in the aggregate demand, the GDP goes down, that means even the economic growth goes down, right? Economic growth goes down. Coming here, if the imports become cheaper, so there are certain products which we import, for example, oil prices, oil products. So in that case, the inflation comes down, right? So it actually helps controlling the inflation. So appreciation impact is successive appreciation of domestic currency can make BOP adverse because it actually adversely impact the export. Overall inflation can be decreased. This is the benefit. Now, there is a new term, currency crisis, right? So till now we have covered everything about exchange rate fluctuation. This currency crisis is an extreme case. This is an extreme case of decline in the external value of the domestic currency. And this decline is not intentional. This is suddenly, this is out of control, right? So this crisis means anything which happens suddenly, which is out of control. So in case of currency, this currency crisis involves the sudden and steep decline in the value of a nation's currency, which causes negative ripple effects throughout the economy. Unlike a currency devaluation as part of a trade war, a currency crisis is not purposeful event. It is not a purposeful event and is to be avoided, right? So currency devaluation is a purposive and deliberate attempt, but this currency crisis is not a purposive, it is out of control. But a currency crisis such as hyperinflation, so it can happen because of the hyperinflation. So because of the hyperinflation, our exports become completely uncompetitive, and because of that, the external value of money comes down suddenly. But a currency crisis such as hyperinflation is often the result of a shoddy real economy, right? So this is actually indicating if there is high inflation, that means the supply chains are poor, infrastructure is poor, the production is not happening, right? Underlying the nation's currency. In other words, a currency crisis is often the symptom and not the disease of the greater economic malaise, right? So if in any country the currency crisis happens, this is not actually the cause, rather this is the symptom of the real economic problem, right? The real economic problem can be in the form of infrastructure deficit, poor technology, poor quality of the manpower, poor ease of doing business environment. Because of all these factors, there is no production happening, resulting into hyperinflation, which resulting into no export or very low export, resulting into the currency crisis, right? So currency crisis is actually the outcome of the poor economy. It is not the reason. Real life example is Asian crisis of 1997, right? So we will not get into detail of 1997 Asian crisis, that will take a lot of time. So you just need to understand that this is the concept. Central bank and the government can intervene to help stabilize the currency by selling of reserves of foreign currency or gold, or by intervening in the foreign exchange markets. Now this last concept in this lecture, hard currency, right? Hard currency. What is the meaning of hard currency? So any currency which is acceptable by everyone and which is liquid also. Liquid means which can be sold very, very easily. So can you give the example? The example is US dollar, right? So US dollar is one of the example of hard currency. So hard currency is a currency which is widely accepted around the world as a form of payment for goods and services. So anyone and everyone is ready to accept that as a mode of payment. US dollar is something which everyone in this world can accept, because the person knows that he or she can give to anyone and everyone will accept. A hard currency is expected to remain relatively stable. So the value of hard currency remains stable through a short period of time and to be highly liquid. That means it can be sold and purchased anytime by anyone. The hard currency generally comes from a nation with a strong economic and political situation like USA, right? So this is the meaning of the hard currency. So with this I complete this session, right? So our exchange rate topic is also complete. In the next sessions we will come up with the rupee convertibility and the concepts like trade agreements, WTO, etc. Right? So major portion of the exchange rate, major portion of the balance of payment and the external sector is complete. This is over. You can solve maximum number of questions that came in the previous year from this discussion only. Right? Thank you very much. God bless you.